Claire Redfield is one of my favorite characters in Resident Evil, and depending on what day you ask me, she is my favorite character. Today is one of those days. She was introduced in RE2 and became one of the recurring protagonists ever since. Welcome to Bird's Tales, that show where we take any character from any media, break down their lives, and analyze that character. Today's subject is Claire Redfield. Before I start, I want to give a special thanks to Crystal Dark 66 for requesting Claire. Claire was born in 1979. She was the younger sister of former STARS member Chris Redfield. After their parents died, they only had each other. In 1990, Chris joined the military. There he met Barry Burton and the two became friends. Chris would introduce Barry to his younger sister and Barry became a family friend. Claire was 11 at the time. In 1995, Chris left the military and the next year he moved to Raccoon and he and Barry joined Raccoon Special Tactic and Rescue Service, or STARS. Whenever Claire had time, she went to Raccoon to visit her brother, where he trained her in hand-to-hand combat and with a firearm. In 1997, Claire graduated high school. Either that same year or the next year, she became a university student. In university, she grew an interest in motorcycle customization, and by that point, she owned 2 bikes. Claire also became skilled in lockpicking, but unfortunately, she never got the title as Master of Unlocking. In July 1998, STARS Alpha Team went to the Arclay Mountains after losing all contact with STARS Bravo Team. There, Chris and the other STARS member learned the truth about Umbrella, the pharmaceutical giant. Chris, Jill, and Barry did their own private investigation into Umbrella. Chris' investigation led him to Europe, and after some time, he would stop contacting his younger sister. Claire, concerned, went to Raccoon City to see if her brother was still alive. Claire rode to Raccoon on a Ducati 500 GT. Her search for her brother wouldn't be easy. Claire arrived after the T-Virus made its way through the city, and the city's streets were being ran by zombies and other creatures. The zombies, just being masters at hiding, hid themselves until Claire stopped off at diner, and when she witnessed a zombie having a little snack. Before she was made into a snack herself, she ran into rookie cop Leon Kennedy. He told her they should go to the police station, and they began to drive there in his car. On their way there, Leon told her that it was his first day, and she told him that she was looking for her brother. Leon then gave Claire a gun for protection. Then they were attacked by an extra passenger, but they were able to get the clearly drunk man out of the vehicle. They then noticed a truck about to ram into their vehicle. They were forced to split up, but they promised to meet each other at the police station. Claire, continuing to the police station, went through a gun shop, and the funniest yet creepiest character came. And then the funniest scene happened. I'm only mentioning this because it was hilarious. Claire made it to the police station, and there she met a little girl who had a connection to the events that are happening in Raccoon. Before this, she met Brian Irons, the corrupt police chief who turned a blind eye to Umbrella's crimes. Anyway, she found Sherry hiding in one of the rooms. When Claire asked Sherry about her parents, Sherry said that her parents were working at the chemical plant. Sherry then told Claire that she saw something way scarier and way bigger than any zombie, and that something was after her. As we know, and what Claire will later find out, the creature that is after Sherry is William Birkin, Sherry's father. Trying to seek revenge on Umbrella, he infected himself with the G virus, and he mutated into the G creature. G wanted Sherry because it saw her as a breeding tool. Sherry ended up running off after hearing the creature. Claire tried to stop her, but she was unable to. Claire would run into Sherry once again outside of the police station, but this time Sherry wanted to look for her father, so she went off to do so. Sherry wasn't able to find her father, and she wasn't able to return to Claire. They will meet again in Police Chief Brian Irons' office. Claire traveled under the police chief office, and there she found Brian Irons. He then told her everything he knew about the G virus and Sherry. Depending on the scenario, Brian Irons would either be killed by William Birkin or one of his rejected G embryos, and Claire would either defeat William Birkin or the rejected G embryo in the sewer. Claire returned to Sherry, and she would tell Leon that she found the way out using the radio he gave her. This is also different depending on the scenario. If you're playing scenario A, Birkin G will be the main focus, and his goal to implant one of his parasitic embryos inside of Sherry. In scenario B, Mr. X and his goal to retrieve a G virus sample is the main focus. I'll talk more about scenario B later. Sherry and Claire traveled to the sewers, and they would either be followed by William Birkin or Mr. X. Sherry was separated from Claire, and in Claire's search for Sherry in the sewers, Claire ran into Annette Birkin. Annette revealed that the creature that is after Sherry is none other than Sherry's father. She also reveals why G is after Sherry. Soon after, Claire found Sherry, and it's revealed that Birkin G was successful in implanting one of his G embryos inside of Sherry. Claire Claire being Claire went to the Umbrella Nest to find a vaccine. Claire was successful in this. After the self-destruct system was activated, Claire and Sherry escaped the facility with Leon on a train. G attached itself to carts and they were forced to abandon the train. G was then caught in the exploding facility. In scenario B, as I mentioned, Mr. X is the main focus and his goal to retrieve a G virus sample. But just because William Birkin is the main focus doesn't mean Sherry isn't being pursued. Mr. X will be pursuing Sherry because of her locket given to her by her mother. That locket possessed a G virus sample. In this scenario, Sherry would not be infected with the G virus, and Mr. X will meet his end at the Umbrella Nest. The ending is pretty much the same. I mentioned this in my William Birkin video. If I can talk about a remake, I will. Also, any chance I get, I'm talking about this remake. In the remake, Claire goes to Raccoon for the exact same reasons as the original. This time, she rides to Raccoon on a Harley Davidson. Instead of stopping at Diner, she stopped at a gas station outside of Raccoon City. There, she ran into her first zombie as well as rookie cop Leon Kennedy. Leon and Claire then rode to Raccoon City and they were forced to split up for the same reason as the original truck about to ram into their vehicle. They promised to meet each other at the Raccoon's police department. Claire or Leon would run into Marvin. Does he have a last name? Yes. Do I remember his last name? No. Anyway, in a passageway while trying to leave the police department, Claire heard footsteps. She then found a little girl hiding in the machinery room. Claire was then attacked by William Birkin. Claire, being an absolute unit, defeated William Birkin with only a knife. Claire and Sherry introduced themselves while attempting to leave the police department. In this conversation, Sherry says something that's different from the original. She says her father is dead. In the original, she believed that both of her parents were still working. Also, dead parents is something Sherry and Claire have in common. They arrive to the parking lot and police psychopathic chief Brian Irons kidnapped Sherry and took her to the Raccoon orphanage. Claire, being Claire, went to go find a keycard to go after Chief Irons. Soon after finding the keycard, she was contacted by police psychopathic chief Brian Irons. He wanted Sherry's locket. She picked it up after Brian Irons kidnapped Sherry. Claire then made her way to the Raccoon orphanage. Claire arrived after G implanted one of its G embryos inside of Chief Irons, and Sherry was found under the Raccoon orphanage. They were then chased by Mr. X to a nearby elevator. Mr. X was then wounded by Birkin G. Birkin G then attacked the elevator. Claire awoke to Annette Birkin checking if she was infected. When Claire asked Annette Birkin if Sherry was okay, Annette refused to answer. Claire, being Claire, searched for Sherry to see if she was okay. She was able to find Sherry, and it's revealed that Birkin G was successful in implanting one of his G embryos inside of Sherry. Claire ended up taking Sherry to the Umbrella Nest to find a vaccine. She was successful, and soon after finding the vaccine, Birkin G attacked. Annette soon arrived. Claire gave her the vaccine and she defeated William Birkin. Claire returned to Sherry and Annette was successful in curing Sherry. Annette then died from her wounds, and well, Claire, you and Sherry have even more in common. Two dead parents. Not long after Annette died, the self-destruct system was activated. They then escaped the facility with Leon on a train. Birkin G attached itself to the rear carts. By disconnecting the rear carts, Birkin G was caught in the exploding facility. After defeating Birkin G, they walked away as the sun rised. After RE2, Claire, Sherry, and Leon promised to stay together for about like 9 seconds. I honestly think Leon told Claire that she had another game to get to as soon as the credits started rolling. Claire told Sherry she was going to come back, and she continued her search for Chris Redfield. Claire believed that Chris was at Umbrella Europe Paris base, and while escaping from the security, Claire does the coolest yet dumbest shit ever. However, she wasn't able to run for long. She was captured and taken to Umbrella prison at the Rockford Island. Not long after her arrival, Wesker and the HCF, that could be a bad name, attacked the island in search of Alexia Ashford's T. Veronica virus. Claire was then released by a USS employee, not saying his name because he's not important. He let her go because there was no more use of keeping her there. Claire began to escape and she ran into Steve Burnside. Oh, Steve. I only have one question for Steve. Why are you such a fuck up? Every scene he's in, he is fucking up somehow. You genuinely be amazed by how big of a fuck up he can be sometimes. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Claire and Steve searched for an airport, and this would lead Claire to the Ashford's residence. There she was attacked by Alfred Ashford, the current family head. Alfred believed that Claire was related to these recent attacks, but she had no idea what he was talking about. Alfred ended up leaving, saying that he's gonna keep an eye on her and keep her entertained. Claire, still trying to escape the island, ran into Albert, Wesker. Wesker, knowing Claire is Chris's younger sister, beats her ass just because he a big ass hater. But he doesn't cue her, saying he may have further use for her. Claire then went to the Ashford's private residence, and it's revealed that Alfred is a bit crazy and he believed that he is both himself and his sister. So from this point forward, I will be calling him Alexia Alfred Ashford. Alexia Alfred Ashford, now completely done with Claire and Steve. Oh yeah, Claire met back up with Steve there. Activated the self-destruct system. Claire and Steve then went to the airport. They managed to find the airport, got on a plane. Apparently Steve knows how to fly a plane, and they escaped the facility. On the aircraft, the worst boss fight happens. Then Claire returns as if nothing happened, and she says one of the greatest lines ever.
What was wrong?
Oh, nothing. Just a giant cockroach that had to be stepped on.
But Alexia Alfred Ashford was not done with them yet. He hijacked the aircraft and tucked them to the Arctic base. They crashed into the base, and once there, they began to try to escape. They were able to discover that an Australian polar observation base was near the Umbrella facility, so their goal was to head there. While trying to use a giant drill to drill through the walls, Steve had some naughty thoughts about Claire, and he ended up fucking up. This fuck up wasn't like his normal fuck ups. This fuck up was a big fuck up. Claire ended up fixing Steve's fuck up, and Alexia Alfred Ashford attacked. And somehow Steve does something right. He shoots Alexia Alfred Ashford, and Alexia Alfred Ashford falls down a hole, and this hole is leading you to Alexia Ashford. If I was Claire, I would check to see when the moon is rising, because something is not right here. When escaping the Arctic base, they were attacked by Nosferatu, or Alexander Ashford, Alexia and Alfred's father. Everything is finally right again, and Steve is useless once more. Claire defeats Nosferatu by herself with no help from Steve, and they continue to escape the base. Alexia Ashford was then awakened. She attacked the two and took them back to the facility, and they became Alexia Ashford prisoners. If anybody is confused, this is the real Alexia Ashford and not her brother Alexia Alfred Ashford. While Claire was at the Rockford Island, she was able to send a message to Leon Kennedy. Leon was able to get in contact with Chris. By the time Chris arrived to the Rockford Island, Claire was already gone. At the island, Chris found out that Claire was at the Arctic base and he would head there. He was successful in finding his sister, and Claire awakened to her brother after Alexia Ashford attacked. She was so happy to see Chris, but Claire being Claire would go to find Steve, who was taken for T. Veronica research. By the time Claire found Steve, he mutated from the virus and he attacked her, but he refused to cue her. He was cued by Alexia Ashford. As he was dying, Steve confessed his love to Claire. Chris then activated the self-destruct system and he met back up with Claire. Alexia Ashford then arrived. Chris said he was going to handle her by himself and he told Claire to escape, but someone else was at the facility, Albert Wesker. Albert took Claire hostage, but with the promise of fighting the second coming of the Frost, he let her go. For those who don't know, the second coming of the Frost is Claire Redfield. Claire then went to prepare a jet for takeoff, and after Wesker was damaged by the destroying facility, he let Chris go. Chris and Claire then escaped the facility as it's being destroyed. After the events of Code Veronica, Claire returned to Sherry, like she promised. Sherry was taken into US custody after the destruction of Raccoon, and Claire stayed by Sherry's side as she had to suffer through many experiments. Derek C. Simmons, the National Security Advisor and one of the antagonists of Resident Evil 6, was made Sherry's legal guardian. He allowed Claire to visit Sherry as much as she wanted, but Claire didn't trust him, so she wrote a letter to Sherry, but the letter never made it to Sherry. The letter was intercepted and destroyed. It was not Derek C. Simmons who intercepted the letter and destroyed it. If you play Resident Evil 6, you know who Simmons is. I really can't stand the US government in Resident Evil and how basically they took Sherry's entire life. I don't want to go too deep into this. I talk about why I dislike the US government in my Sherry video, so look forward to that whenever the hell that video comes out. Anyway, in Claire's letter, Claire writes that Sherry shouldn't trust Simmons, and this probably could have prevented Resident Evil 6. Oh, who am I kidding? Resident Evil 6 was still gonna happen. It was just gonna change a lot of things. Claire also writes that she wouldn't be able to visit Sherry as often. Around this time, Claire began associating with TerraSave, an NGO that offers aid to victims of bioterrorism. In 2005, TerraSafe set their sights on Will Pharma Corporation. They believed the company was connected to a recent outbreak in India, but this isn't true. Claire traveled to Harvardville, the company's hometown, as part of a protest aimed at Senator Ron Daves. Daves is a known Will Pharma investor. While Claire was at Hardinsville Airport, an outbreak happened. Claire managed to save Senator Daves, a little girl named Ronnie, and some random flight attendant. Leon and the team are soon sent in to rescue the survivors. With the help of Claire, Leon was able to get the survivors to safety. And honestly, Leon and Claire could have done this mission alone. The people that came with Leon were just basically luggage. Anyway, after they escaped the airport, it's revealed that Will Pharma created a T-virus vaccine, and they were fighting against the outbreak in India. Claire felt guilty now that she knows that TerraSafe had a hand in slowing down the distribution and the creation of the T-virus vaccine. Soon after, one of Will Pharma's trucks were destroyed. They believed that this was another terrorist attack. Claire then remembered seeing Curtis Miller at the airport when the outbreak began. Miller was a former Will Pharma researcher and a former TerraSafe activist, and he became the prime suspect. Anyway, I want to speed this up. Claire and Dr. Frederick Downing, a Will Pharma biologist, went to the Will Pharma's local lab to check to see if the T-virus vaccine data is safe. At the lab, it's revealed that Will Pharma purchased a G-virus sample on the black market. Dr. Downing left to check a disturbance on the lower floors. It's revealed that the disturbance is Curtis Miller. Curtis finds the G-virus sample and infects himself with it. The infected Curtis battles Leon and some non-important people. Claire was able to escape the facility with only a leg injury. After the battle, they were able to figure out that Downing orchestrated the attack and was planning to sell the G-virus and the T-virus vaccine data. They were able to catch and arrest Dr. Downing before this happened. And that's the end of this movie. For this video, I watched all the Resident Evil movies, and this one to me was the best. In 2006, 6 years after the Panamstan War, TerraSafe went to provide food and shelter to the people of Panamstan. Okay, I do not feel like saying Panamstan again. Claire was helping at one of the camps and she would meet a deaf young boy. After looking at his drawings of what he saw during the war, Claire began to believe that the T-virus or something similar was used in Panamstan. Claire would soon go to the White House because she had an appointment with Secretary Spacer. When I first watched Infinite Darkness, I thought he didn't have a name and it was just Secretary of Space. I don't know why. Anyway, Claire arrived after the recent bioterrorist attack on the White House. Claire was told that Spacer was on leave, but he had died during that attack. Claire then spots Leon and she shows him the drawings, saying that she believes an outbreak happened at Panamstan. Leon, being a little busy, leaves and tells Claire not to do anything stupid. Claire returned to her motel and began her investigation on the war. She discovered that 5 of the Mad Dog operatives had unalived themselves after returning to Texas. The Mad Dog were a special ops unit that served in Panamstan. Claire, continuing her investigation, ended up going to one of the last surviving veterans. Once Claire arrived to his home, she discovered that he had already offed himself. Claire discovered the note at the man's home, and after reading it, she concluded that the Mad Dog operatives were infected with whatever virus was used in Panamstan. Claire then returns to the White House to ask Defense Secretary Wilson of his involvement with BOWs, but he ignores her. When Claire returned to her motel, she wouldn't be staying there long. She was attacked and kidnapped by 2 Secret Service agents. They took her to a secret facility, and when she awoke, she was strapped to a chair. Defense Secretary Wilson, being the one who requested this kidnapping, was also there. Wilson tried to bribe Claire and he told her about his plans. I don't know why, he just did it. Jason, the last Mad Dog operative, soon arrived to the facility. He had different plans, so he murdered Wilson, and his plans were to spread terror by showing the world what the virus created. Leon and Claire, but mostly Leon, are able to stop Jason. After the events at the secret facility, Claire asked Leon to give her the information about the virus that was used in Panamstan, and she was going to release it to the press, but Leon refused. When I was writing this video, I was about to talk about everything I didn't like about Leon and Claire in this TV show. Infinite Darkness just doesn't feel like it happened. It doesn't feel like it's a part of Resident Evil's world. It just felt like this parallel universe. Is it just me who feel that way? In 2009, Albert Wesker was killed by Claire Redfield and Sheva. What's her last name? This is important because the US government has no reason to keep Sherry in custody. Sherry then becomes a government agent in exchange for her freedom. Sherry and Claire still spend time together whenever they weren't busy. Also, the little girl Ronnie from Degenerations became a friend of Sherry's, and she also hung out with the two. The year was 2011. While at a company event, Claire was introduced to her new partner, Moira Burton, Barry Burton's eldest daughter. The power then went out in the building and it was stormed by a group of masked assailants. Claire, Moira, and other TerraSave employees were captured. They were taken to the Zen Island, and when Claire awakened, she was in a prison cell, in an old prison. Claire reunited with Moira, and they began to look for a way out of the prison. They soon found out that the prison was being ran by mutated humans. They were able to escape the prison. They began to hear someone talking to them, calling themselves the Overseer. Claire and Moira then began heading to a nearby radio tower. There, Claire was able to see that they were on an island, and Moira sent out a distress signal. They then headed to a nearby fishing village where they ran into two non-importants. One of the non-importants would try to fix a helicopter, while Claire and Moira, the other non-important, searched around the village. During their search, the non-important that was searching with Claire and Moira began to mutate. It is then revealed that all of them were infected with the T-Phobos virus, and that virus reacts to fear. Thanks to Neil Fisher, Claire and Moira were able to escape the mutated non-important. Fisher then separated from the group, and Claire and Moira headed to a nearby tower. Claire believed that the Overseer was at the tower. On their way to the tower, they found the little girl. The girl's name was Natalia Korda. Claire, Moira, and Natalia made it to the tower. At the same time, the non-important that was working on a helicopter succeeded in fixing it. Then the Overseer hijacked the controls and the helicopter crashed with the non-important inside. During the commotion, Natalia went missing. At the tower's entrance, they found a note telling them to go to the nearby factory. Alex Wesker had set a trap at the factory, and when Claire and Moira were at the factory, the trap was activated and the factory exploded. Claire and Moira managed to escape the factory as it exploded. Because Alex Wesker believed them to be dead, they were able to sneak into the tower. In the tower, they found out that Neil was working with the Overseer, and he was behind the attack at the company event. Neil was only working with Alex Wesker, the Overseer, because he wanted a sample of the Ouroboros virus, and he wanted to create a vaccine so it can be useless in the black market. However, that's not something that Alex Wesker agreed with, the Overseer. The Overseer then infects Neil with the virus, and Claire and Moira finds him as he's mutating. Mutated Fisher was too much for Claire to handle by herself, so Moira picks up a gun and shoots Neil, overcoming her fear of guns. They then continue through the tower and they found the Overseer's office. Then they found Alex Wesker herself. Wesker shoots herself, activating the self-destruct system. They begin to escape the tower. Moira saves Claire, and Claire is forced to leave Moira behind. Claire was later found in the ocean, and she was taken to an intensive care unit. Barry, being there, asked Claire about Moira, but all Claire could do is apologize to him. 6 months later, Claire went back to the island after Barry went to look for Moira on his own. Claire arrived as they were battling Alex Wesker. She delivered the final blow, mimicking her brother 3 years ago. Did anyone know this manga existed? Because I didn't. In 2014, Claire is sent to investigate the island of Sonido de Tortuga after reports of possible BOW related activities. The island was also the filming location of the idol show, Idol Survivor. Claire went to the fishing town when she saw a severely mutated fish. She took pictures of it and sent it to her partner. Suddenly, the fish springs to life and Claire has to end it with her combat knife. During her investigation, Claire was able to discover that the island was purchased by Oswald E. Spencer in 1994. When Claire wasn't able to get in contact with her partner, she called Chris in the BSAA for assistance. Chris wasn't able to go because he was busy with his own mission, so Parker Luciani, Jill's partner from Revelations, was sent to help Claire. Claire found her partner and ran into the survivors of the idol show. They were then attacked by 2 VOWs. The only one worth mentioning is the Mabu, cause it's cool. Claire took the survivors to a safe location, an abandoned facility on the island. At the facility, Dirk Miller, the man responsible for the BOWs on this island, revealed himself. Claire tried to arrest him, but she was stopped by one of the idols. The idol was able to obtain a sample of Miller's virus, and she knocked Claire out. Claire awakened after the idol infected herself with the virus. Claire murdered the Mabu, and she believed she killed the mutated idol with a goddamn rocket launcher. The idol was later killed by some nobody. After the events at the island, she reported her findings to Chris. The next year, Claire went to San Francisco because a resident called about a mutilated orca that washed ashore. TerraSafe was tracking that orca. When Claire examined the whale, she discovered strange bite marks. The bite marks didn't belong from any animal in this area. Before leaving, she took samples of the carcass. She then asked Rebecca Chambers, who was now working at the BSAA as an advisor, to examine the sample further. While at the BSAA laboratory, she ran into Jill Valentine and her brother Boulder Puncher. Rebecca and Claire then told Jill and Chris about the orca. They told them that the whale was swimming in a giant Fairline marine sanctuary with a lot of other whales that TerraSafe were tracking. But the whales began to disappear near the Alcatraz Island. Not only that, the orca was infected with the same T-virus strain as many of the victims in Jill and Chris's case. And everyone who was infected with the T-virus strain went to a trip to Alcatraz before they were infected. Believing they have a lead, Claire, Jill, and Chris went to the island, which was home to an abandoned prison. The three blended in with tourists until many of the tourists were infected with the virus and began to mutate. Jill separated from the group, and when they attempted to contact her, their signal was jammed. Chris and Claire were able to find another survivor. When he discovered Claire worked for TerraSafe, he blamed TerraSafe for the outbreak in Harvardville Airport. Claire angrily responds that if he watched real news, he would know the TerraSafe were framed. The man, not understanding the situation, wandered off. He was then attacked by the mutated tourists. Claire and Chris saved the man, but he was wounded. Claire attended to his wounds, and he was shocked that she would help him after what he said. Not long after, Claire is infected with the T-virus strain. Then Chris is infected. Claire and Chris were then moved to cells. Chris was in a cell alone, and Claire was in a cell with the man that they saved. Leon and Jill didn't arrive. Leon was on his own investigation, and that's what led him to Alcatraz. The man behind the infection then revealed himself. He is not important, but if you must know his name, is Dylan Blake. Blake then explains how people are being infected without getting bitten. Then Leon is infected by one of his bio drones. Then Blake gives a stupid ass monologue. Then he shoots the man that Claire and Chris saved. Oh yeah, by the way, the man Claire and Chris saved is the guy who created the bio drones. After shooting the man, Blake leaves to complete his plan. Jill then leaves to stop him. By the way, Blake's plan was to infect the world with his strain of the T-virus using the bio drones. As the man Claire and Chris saved died, he gave Claire the backup code to the drone system. But he does say Blake may have changed the code after he was done with him. As Jill was going to stop Blake, she ran into Rebecca Chambers, who was able to create a vaccine. Jill told Rebecca where to find the others, and once Rebecca arrived, she gave Chris, Claire, and Leon the vaccine. By the time the group caught up with Jill, Blake infected himself and fused with one of his BOWs. Throughout this entire fight, I literally had one question. Where were they getting these weapons from? They were switching through this like they had an inventory or some shit. Like 1 second they all have pistols, the next second Rebecca and Claire have rocket launchers. Anyway, Leon told Claire and Rebecca to stop the drones, and they left to do so. They were able to get control of the drones, and Rebecca used the drones to disrupt the BOW's DNA. The mutation was cute after it was trying to escape. After defeating the creature, they all celebrated and they left the island. That's the end of Dead Island. I never thought I was gonna make it to this part. Anyway, one of Claire's defining character traits is her compassion, and that's one of the reasons people love her, me included. In almost every Resident Evil Claire appears in, Claire is either trying to protect someone or trying to help someone. As soon as Claire met Sherry, Claire's goal became to lead Sherry to safety, and Sherry isn't the only person Claire does this with. In Generations, Claire not only ensures Ronnie's safety, but she also ensures every other survivor's safety until Leon arrives. And even then, she still makes sure that the survivors are safe. She even makes sure that Ron Davis, a man she doesn't even like, is safe. I'm not saying the other RE protagonists wouldn't do the same, and most of them would, and that's the reason why I love them. This fact also makes them extremely different from Umbrella and many of the other bioterrorists. Umbrella and all of the bioterrorists only care about their own interests, while the protagonists are always fighting for those who can't fight themselves. One of my favorite lines from Degeneration is, "If you don't try to save one life, you never save any." And that line is something that most of the RE protagonists believe. But the thing that makes Claire different, unlike the other protagonists, Claire never had any type of military training. The only other person who didn't have any kind of military training was Ethan Winters, and that was only in Resident Evil 7. By Resident Evil 8, he was already trained. But Claire was only trained by Chris, and at the time, I don't really see him teaching her more than just self-defense. So with Claire's limited skills, she was able to prove that she is as capable or sometimes even more capable than those with military training. On that note, I want to talk about Claire's intelligence. Claire not only solved a lot of different puzzles at age 19, but she also learned to use a lot of different weapons. And she not only learned to use these weapons, she learned to modify them as well. And like I said, she doesn't have any kind of military training, but she isn't the only person who does cool shit without any military training. Ethan again fixed the gun in RE7 with no training whatsoever. He may have been interested in guns, but who knows. Another character trait about Claire that you just can't help but love is Claire's bravery. Claire never hesitates to throw herself in danger. A great example of this is the beginning of Code Veronica. Claire literally broke into an umbrella vase, did the dumbest yet coolest shit ever, ran from a helicopter just trying to look for her brother. That doesn't tell you that that girl is brave and a little stupid? Then I don't know what would. Another example of this is with Sherry. Claire put herself in so many dangerous situations just trying to help Sherry. Did she ever hesitate? Not a single time. Just like every other RE protagonist, Claire has some character growth. It may not be on the same level as Leon and Sherry, but it's there. Just like every other protagonist, Claire never asked to be a part of the BOW world, but she was able to find her place and stick to it. My favorite line from D-Generations is when Leon tells Claire, "You chose the role of a rescuer rather than a fighter, like me. You chose the road that your brother and I couldn't follow. You weren't wrong." This line shows why the path Claire chose is so special. Unlike most of the RE protagonists, Rebecca and Claire are the only two who didn't choose the role of a fighter, but that doesn't mean their role isn't important. Sometimes it's even more important. But just because they didn't choose the role of a fighter doesn't mean they aren't gonna fight when a situation calls for it. But Claire's role as rescuer is one of the reasons why she symbolized hope and protection in a world like Resident Evil. The next thing I want to talk about is what I call the two Claires. The Claire from the remake and the Claire from the original. Claire in RE2 remake is a little different from Claire in the original. She isn't as badass as Claire from the original timeline. Claire from the remake doesn't feel like she would deliver this line.
What was wrong?
Oh, nothing. Just a giant cockroach that had to be stepped on.
After defeating a tyrant. Sure, remake Claire can say it, but it doesn't feel like she can deliver it the same way. It may be a voice actress thing, but I hope you get what I'm saying. It also doesn't feel like she can do the opening scene to Code Veronica. She just doesn't feel as capable as OG Claire, but that's not everything. In the original, Claire also feels much older than she actually is. And some of the times where you feel this is when she's interacting with Sherry. Sometimes Claire gives off these mother vibes. She uses words like sweetie, honey, words that someone who is much older than her would use, words that mothers would use, but Claire's only supposed to be 19. Maybe they did this to show that Claire had to mature faster because her parents died when she was young. I'm guessing the RE6 writers also felt these mother vibes because they wrote in one of the files, Sherry considered Claire to be her new mother after losing both her parents. Oh yeah, another time Claire feels a lot older than she is when she's interacting with Steve. Not only does Steve feel like a child, he doesn't feel like he's 17. Claire doesn't feel like she's 2 years older than him. She feels like she's much older than him. But in the remake, Claire feels her age. Claire doesn't feel like she can be Sherry's mother. Claire feels like she can be Sherry's older sister. In short, what I'm saying about Claire is Claire in the original feels a lot more mature than she would at her age. She's 19, she feels like she's way older than that. But Claire in the remake feels her age. She feels like she's a 19-year-old. She feels like she's a college student. She feels like she could be Sherry's older sister. But she does lose some of that badassery original Claire had. Oh yeah, the fact that Claire feels like Sherry's older sister is one of the reasons why I like Sherry and Claire's relationship in the remake more than the original. Claire is one of my favorite characters, and like I mentioned, depending on when you ask me, she is my favorite character. The first game I played with Claire, it wasn't even a full game, it was a demo. It was Resident Evil Revelations 2 demo, and she wasn't really that memorable from that demo. But when I played Resident Evil 2 Remake, Claire became one of my favorite characters, and I feel like it's hard for anybody to change my mind on the fact that Claire is the best character in that remake. And for a while, Resident Evil 2 Remake was the only game I played played with Claire until actually last year. I recently was able to play Veronica, and I thought that Claire in the original would be so different from Claire in the remake. Well, she was different, but she did have those things that I loved about her, and one of them being her compassion. I love that Leon and Jill may be the protagonists of Resident Evil 9, even though a lot of leakers say Jill isn't going to be in the game. That would be a huge fucking mistake, Capcom, okay? Keep Jill in the game. If she wasn't in the game, put her in the game. The two protagonists that I loved immediately after seeing them were Leon and Jill, and I noticed that they didn't have any interactions in game, so I was like, Capcom need to do a game on them when I first started playing Resident Evil. But something that I would love to see just as much as Leon and Jill is Claire and Jill or Claire and Leon. But Capcom can do something that can instantly make a game a 10 out of 10. And that's if they make Claire and Sherry the protagonists. You will have to make a very bad game for me not to like that game automatically. I mean, it would have to be very bad. It would have to be on some AI slop bad. It would have to be terrible for me to say I don't like that game. Anyway, if you liked this video, you can give it a like. If you didn't, thank you for the watch time. You can always comment what character you want me to do next. Once again, I would like to give a special thanks to Crystal Dark 66 or Miss Crystal for requesting Claire. I had a lot of fun making this.
I got it!
You're kidding me! It's jammed! Oh, this is embarrassing.
What's going on in this town?
Hold on. I ain't got no clue, darling. By the time I noticed something was wrong, the entire city was infested with zombies. But don't you worry, girlie. You'll be safe in here. I'm keeping a close eye on things.
You still here?